Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I've put together a collection of 5 Christmas in July decor crafts. For my project today, I'm going to be using this hardcover book that I thrifted, and I'm going to be pouring out some of my Sealy's Quick Set wood glue and mixing some water in. I'm going to be creating a open book, and I've done a lot of those in the past. So if you want a more in-depth tutorial, probably my videos from last year would be a bit better, but this one will give you the basics. So I've just watered down the glue. I'm adding the glue over the top of the pages. I have the book open up to approximately halfway, and now I'm applying the glue and water mixture over the entire book. I'm going over the sides of the pages. I'm going over the pages where we're actually going to be adding the designs. I'm also then lifting the book up and adding the glue and water mixture to the sides of the pages, top and bottom. You really just want to make sure that you've got it pretty saturated. I dried that off, and then I came in with some of my Sealy's Quick Set wood glue, but I didn't dilute it this time. I am applying it directly to the edges of the pages. I find that this just gives it some extra hold. I'm also going to be adding it to the top and bottom sides of the pages, and this also helps with the look of age on the pages as well. So really working that glue in. I am just using a chip brush. You don't want to use your good brushes for this particular craft. I then started separating the pages, and I'm using hot glue and sort of staggering the heights of the pages. That's how you get that opened book sort of trapped in time look. And now I'm taking a pencil and rolling some of the pages, the corners of the pages up the top there, over the top of it, adding a little bit more of that glue mixture, and then adding a bit of hot glue as well. Again, this adds to that aged appearance. I let that dry completely, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Farmhouse Linen Chalk Paint. I stirred it really, really well, and now I'm going over the top of the entire book. I'll also paint the cover as well. I ended up doing 3 coats of this just to make sure that all of that writing wasn't going to come through, and obviously I'm paying particular attention to all of the pages, making sure that I'm getting it onto all of the areas that you can see. I'm then going to take out IOD's new kitschy Christmas transfer. This is 8 pages of absolutely adorable transfer designs. This is very retro, very vintage Christmas. You've probably had a lot of Christmas cards as you were growing up with these designs on them, and it is just so nostalgic and beautiful. I just think we're spoilt for choice really with these. They'd be perfect on ornaments, on any Christmas decorations really. Perfect gifts, gift tags. Absolutely lovely. I'm definitely going to be using this one a lot in my holiday crafts. The design that really jumped out to me to start off with was this beautiful snowman. So I'm going to trim him out. I'm also cutting around some of the empty space just so I can better visualize how I'm going to be positioning my transfers. I then cut out this sweet little bunny. I do end up changing him over because the scale was a bit wrong, but I definitely wanted to have a little critter down in the bottom right hand corner. I'm then going to cut out this beautiful trim here that IOD have included, this beautiful garland with the Christmas ornaments on it, and I'm going to be adding those on the sides. So here I'm just having a little look at the layout, placing things down so that I can figure out how I want my design to appear. I then took out IOD's new Yuletide transfer. So this is from the new release, and as you can see, it has a lot of woodland creatures in it, a very natural theme happening. You've got your cardinals. You have lots of holly as well. We've got some holly trim there, some Christmas trees, some Santas, some stockings. Again, this is definitely going to be a very versatile transfer to use so many images to choose from. I really wanted to use one of the Christmas trees from the Yuletide transfer, so I'm going to trim that out. And I'm going to be positioning that one on the right-hand page of my design. And I'm also thinking about the placement, what's going to go in front, what's going to go behind. I also loved the bells in that one as well. So again, just working out what is going to be in the foreground, what's going to be in the background. I'm then going to trim the garland trim, because I want it to be a sort of corner design there. So I'm going to do that on the right and left-hand corners. And I'm just working out where the design on the the snowman ends so that I can have that meet up with the festive garland. I used my phone to take a photo of the layout, and then I started to remove the pieces of transfer so that I could start applying them. I'm going to be beginning with the festive garland there on the left, and I'm going to peel the backing off and position it where I want it to go. And then I'm going to use the transfer stick that comes with the pack, and I'm going to start rubbing and burnishing that design down. I like to go over the top of the entire design first, and then I pick up the plastic and I start pulling that away as I'm rubbing, and this definitely helps it to release. If you miss any spots, just pop it back down and continue rubbing. I'm then going to be adding the other design, but once I sort of put it down, I decided that I wanted to trim a little bit more of it off and sort of reposition that so that it didn't come all the way across the page. I'm then going to take the part that I cut off and put that back in place because that's where it was originally on the design. I'm just going to rub that down, and then it is back in place. I then decided to trim off just a little bit more of that garland. I can use that elsewhere, and now it's the perfect length. So I'm going to press that down and start transferring the image. Once I remove that plastic, I do like to use my fingers to go in and gently press that design down. I'm then going to be positioning our lovely snowman on the left-hand side there. I'm then going to go over the top of the entire image with my transfer stick to get that all stuck down. Then I pick up a corner and I start rubbing and burnishing that design down until I have the whole image in place. Once the snowman is in place, I'm going to add the garland on the right-hand side and just repeating the same process as before. I know it's a little bit repetitive, but my main goal really with this video is to show you how you can cut apart and arrange and layer the transfers to get a really beautiful custom look. And this is something that you could do on anything. You could be doing the same design on a sign. You could be doing this on the front of a book instead, or maybe a gift box. So many options. I then took out the same kitschy Christmas transfer again because I wanted to swap over the bunny. It felt too big, the scale wasn't right. I then sat that off to the side because we need to put the tree from the Yuletide transfer down first because I want the bunny to sit in front of it. I'm then going to start burnishing down that transfer so that it's all in place. So definitely think about the layers of your project before you start adding your transfers. You definitely want to be really conscious of what you want in the front and what you want to be in the background. Once the tree was in place, it was time to peel the backing off that sweet little bunny and press it down in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm loving the variety of scale in these beautiful transfers. It means that you can use them for a huge range of projects. I then took out these lovely bells. We're going to put those in the corners, top left and right. Now they aren't matching, but I felt like they were similar enough that they would look nice in each of the corners and not be too odd and too different to go together. Now at this point, I probably should have sealed my project, but I got too excited and moved on to using Paint Couture's crust texture and also Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to take out some of that crust and put it in a plastic container, and then I'm going to tint that with the Simply White chalk paint so that it looks like snow. I felt like that this would be a wonderful addition to this book. It would really tie the different pages together, and I'm going to start adding it underneath the snowman first on the left. I'm sort of dabbing it on and sort of lifting the palette knife up and sort of just trying to create the look of snow, and thankfully this product definitely makes it a lot easier to do this. So I'm just going to continue adding that across the left hand side. Adding as much as I want. If you're going to do this, obviously you could add a lot more. I just didn't want to overdo it. And then I moved on and started adding it underneath the tree on the right hand side as well. While the crust is still wet, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Sheer Frost German Glass Glitter, and I'm going to start adding that over the top to give our snow some sparkle and shine. And the product is still wet, so it will be able to hold on to that glitter pretty well. If you're worried about it, you could always let the crust dry and add a glue instead. I then started adding some more of that crust mixture to our Christmas tree. Wherever I could see that they had put some snow sitting on the branches, I went in with that crust medium. I'm not going too heavy. I do still want it to be a subtle look, but again, I felt like that this was definitely going to tie the project together. If you are in Australia and you would like to get some of the amazing IOD holiday release, make sure you check out my website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Just keep in mind that these designs are a limited release, so make sure you get in quick. While the crust medium is still wet, I'm going to add some of that sheer frost German glass glitter. I also then decided to add a couple of little dabs of that crust medium on our wonderful snowman, again trying to create that sort of cohesion between the two book page designs. And then while that is still wet, again, just like before, I'm going to be adding that sheer frost German glass glitter. When the crust was dry, I took out IOD's Merry and Bright stamp set. Unfortunately, this is a retired design, but I really want the words Merry Christmas. So you could definitely use IOD's apothecary stamps to spell out the words Merry Christmas instead if you don't have this one. I am taking the stamps out and then I'm going to lay them on my book itself so that I can work out the position and make sure that I'm happy with how it's going to be sitting. I then picked up the word Merry. I'm using IOD's permanent black ink and I'm going to be positioning that in the top left hand corner there, and then I'm going to press it down, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the word Christmas. I then took out IOD's new Vintage Snowflakes stamp. This is from the new 2024 holiday release, and I'm going to be pulling the backing off because when you first get your IOD stamps, you need to season them. I'm just using some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly scuff the surface, just very lightly running that over the top one way. I'll turn it around, do it the other way, and then I'm done. You never have to do this again. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's Stardust Heavy Metal Metallic, and I'm carefully and lightly brushing that over the top of one of the smaller snowflake designs. And I'm going to be pressing that on the left-hand side of the book, and I'm also going to be adding a little bit more paint and adding the same design on the right-hand side. I'm then going to select two more of the smaller snowflakes from that new stamp and repeat the same process. I just felt like this was a more subtle way to include this beautiful stamp. We've already got a lot going on with those transfers. I then took out my Bronze Luxe Metallic and I'm going to very lightly paint some of that on the words Merry Christmas. I'm going to go back over the top of the stamp design just to give the letters a bit more of a sort of sparkle and shine. I let that dry and then I sealed the entire project with a spray gloss sealer. I'm then going to use Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze. I don't want this to be too dark. We're not going for a grungy look, so I'm wiping back a lot and just working in sections. As I said, I did seal this with a spray sealer, so that sealed in all the glitter, and it's also allowing me to wipe back a lot of that glaze. I just really want some definition on the book pages, just a little bit of wear. Again, I don't want it grungy, but I do want it to have that vintage and worn look. So I'm going very, very light and making sure that I don't overdo it. I then added a little bit to the center part of the book, and I'm going to dab a little bit of the glaze on the background of the rest of the pages, but again, very light, very subtle. When that was dry, I started applying some of the Bronze Luxe Metallic just to the page edges. I wanted it to look like they had the gilded edges of the paper, and again, not going in too heavy. I'm just going to sort of build that up. I want it to be noticeable, but again, still look worn, still look like someone has been reading this book. And I'm also going to be sure to wipe it off from the hardcover of the book so that it does look like it's just on the book pages. I then dipped the other end of my paintbrush in the bronze, and I'm just going to dab on a few little spots of that bronze to tie the Christmas tree in with the bronze on the book pages. Finally, I'm going to use some hot glue to attach a red velvet ribbon for a placeholder to go down the center. And here's a look at our vintage style Christmas book. I love how this turned out. The new IOD holiday release transfers are stunning and they go perfectly with the new vintage snowflake stamp. Let me know what you think of today's project in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. For my first project, I'm going to be using this wooden frame that I had in my stash. I've already taken the glass out. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to start pushing down the little backing bits that usually hold in the glass and the backing board. I want to push those down because I am going to actually be adding the backing board to the front of the frame to make it look more like a panel. Now, this type of frame allows me to do this. It has a little recessed bit on the inside there. Not all frames are going to be perfect for this kind of technique, but I was definitely happy to see that this was something that I could do. I am going to be using some Gorilla Super Glue gel around the edges, and I'm also going to be using some hot glue as well for that immediate hold. I'm running the Gorilla Super Glue gel on the inside part of the frame where the backing is going to sit, and then once I have a good amount of that down, I'm going to go in and add some hot glue. As I said, the super glue is going to have that permanent hold. The hot glue is going to give it that immediate hold. I'm then going to pick up the backing board and I'm going to press it down in the center, applying pressure. After wiping off the excess glue with a wet wipe, I turned the frame over and I added some more hot glue around the back inside of the frame as well. When that was set and dry, I took out Paint Couture's grounded mineral paint and I'm going to pour some of that out into a container, and then I'm also going to be adding some salt wash. So this is a texture additive, a powder that you add to your paint. It thickens it up and it allows you to create texture. I'm then going to use a chip brush and I'm going to start dabbing and stippling that onto my surface. I'm going to be adding it and really focusing it on the center part of the project today, and as I said, doing that dabbing and stippling motion. And because I have that salt wash mixed in with my paint, the peaks that we're creating are going to hold their shape, and I'm going for a really old world look too. I then took out Paint Couture's Buttercream chalk paint. I'm going to pour some of that out and I'm going to add some of my salt wash mixture to that just to thicken that paint up. I'm going to stir it really well, and then once I've done that, I'm going to start taking some of that out and sort of smearing it on my center surface there. I'm then going to use my IOD paint blade, and because I already have that dry textured grounded mineral paint mixture down, the paint is skipping over some of that texture and creating this really cool look. This is something I've done a few times. I love that it kind of reminds me of old plaster, and since I am going for more of a panel look, I think that this definitely fit in with the look that I was trying to achieve. So I'm just going to continue to add that buttercream mixture to my surface and then use that paint blade to spread it around. If you're going to do this, it will be up to you how much of the surface underneath you allow to show through. When that was dry, I took out IOD's Classic Elements mold. I've already dusted this beaded trim design with cornstarch, and now I'm working my DAS air dry clay into that particular design. I'm then going to flex the mold, sometimes I then also flip it over to help get some of that casting out. Gravity is definitely a big help. And I'm going to just continue to cast these until I have enough to go around the inner frame that's going to cover the edge of that backing board. I then took out IOD's Trimmings 3 mold, and I'm working my dust air dry clay into one of the trim designs. This is definitely my favorite trimming mold. I'm then going to flex that and flip the mold over and start pulling it back. And again, gravity is definitely a big help here when you are working with intricate designs like this. I'm going to continue to cast these until I have enough to go around the outside of my frame. Now, these are interconnecting designs, so I'm able to continue that pattern. I'm adding down my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to my surface, and then I'm going to press my trimmings castings down into that glue. And you can see here that I'm able to match up the other casting that I made so that I can continue that pattern. And then I'm going to use a palette knife to cut off the excess, and I'll be able to use that other piece in another spot. I'm not going to have these going over the corners because I'm going to cast another mold to go in those sections. So I'm just going to continue adding glue on the outside frame first, and then once I have that sorted, I'm going to start gluing down that beaded trim as well. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. Once I had all of my castings glued down and in place, I took out the Classic Elements mold again, and I'm going to be making a casting of this almost sort of fleur-de-lis style design. I'm going to be casting 4 of those to go in each of the corners. Once I have those castings ready, I will use my wood glue and I will glue those in place. I let my castings dry for a few hours, but before they were completely dry, I came in with some of my grounded mineral paint and salt wash mixture, and I'm going around the edges first. I'm dabbing and stippling that mixture on to the frame section where we don't have any castings. I want that to have a vintage look to it and a textured finish. And then I continued adding some more of that mixture over the rest of my castings. Now, these are not completely dry, so I do still have to be a bit gentle, but painting them before they are completely dry can help with shrinking. I also added the paint to the beaded trim on the inside. I let that dry overnight, and then I took out IOD's new Gloria paint inlay. This is a beautiful French country style paint inlay, black and white designs of all different shapes and sizes. Some of them are very festive, some of them can be more neutral, and they've also included some designs for fall or even Halloween. Some of these could be used as well. I took out this beautiful wreath design. This is going to be going in the center of our project, and I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin to use my paint inlay today. So I'm laying down a generous coat. I want to make sure that I have a nice amount there. I do have chalk paint down, so that is a bit more porous, so I need to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to flip that paint inlay over and put it in my medium design side down. That grid should be facing up at you. I'm going to gently smooth that out, trying to make sure that there's good contact. And then I'm going to use a mister to mist my design, and then also a wet wipe to help smooth out any more wrinkles. I also then grabbed my brayer to try and smooth it out a bit further. I did get a little bit of smearing, but I'm not too worried about that. A bit later you'll see that I'm able to remove that. I let my paint inlay dry. I then misted it again, and after about 60 seconds I started to pull that paint inlay away. This is definitely the most satisfying part. Now, I didn't get a perfect transfer of that image, but I love the vintage look that has been achieved. As I said before, I got a little bit of smearing, so I was able to come in with a wet wipe and pull that back so it wasn't as obvious. I'm not too worried again about that because I don't need this to look perfect. I let it dry completely, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in satin, and I'm running a very light hand over the top of the paint inlay. Now, it is recommended that you use a spray sealer because you can get smearing. You can see I'm sort of wiping back some of those little smears that are appearing. It wasn't as bad as I have had happen in other occasions. I was just feeling very impatient today and I didn't want to take it outside and spray it. But if you are worried about this happening, definitely spray on a clear coat first so that you don't risk smearing. But I think mine turned out okay in the end, thankfully. I then took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to be applying that over the top of the border around the outside. The grounded mineral paint has a built-in top coat, so I am able to wipe back as much or as little as I want. And I'm loving how the glaze is really highlighting all of the details in that beautiful trimmings mold. So I'm just going to continue to add that glaze around the entire outside of the frame and repeating that same process of wiping it back. As I'm working my way around adding the glaze, I also added some to the beaded trim and a little bit onto our inside design where the wreath is, but I didn't put any over the top of the wreath itself because I still want that to be a bit more of that beautiful brighter cream color. I let that dry completely, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic. I'm starting by adding it over the top of the beaded trim design on the inside, working my way around. I do have that satin clear coat over the top of the inner section of our artwork here, so if I make any mistakes, I can go in with a wet wipe and I can wipe that back. I only did one coat on the beaded trim design on the inside, and then I also started adding it to the trim work around the outside. I'm adding it to the center of that trim design and also to the other sections as well. When that was dry, I added some of that Bronze Luxe Metallic over the top of the border on the ribbon on the paint inlay. I'm just going in there and very carefully adding little bits of that bronze. And if I happen to go outside any of those sections, remember I can wipe it back. We do have that clear coat down. I really feel that adding the bronze to the paint inlay in the center brings the center and the frame around the outside all together. And here's a look at our finished wreath artwork. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I haven't had a chance to use the Gloria paint inlay until now, and I'm so glad that I did. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my project today, I'm going to be using this 10 centimeter wide Christmas ornament that I got from eBay. I will find the link and I'll pop that in the description below. And I'm just going to be gluing the two sides together using Gorilla Super Glue Gel. I'm then going to be using a wet wipe to wipe off any of the excess glue. When the glue was dry, I took out Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey. I'm going to be applying 2 coats to both sides of my ornament. I'm applying the primer with a makeup sponge. This means that I won't get any brush strokes at all. This is one of my favourite ways to apply primer to a smooth surface. I let the primer dry for several hours, then I took out IOD's new Angelic Tapers mold. I'm dusting the design on the right hand side with cornstarch first, and then I'm going to be using my Dust Air Dry clay, and I'm just going to press it into the top section of this mold. You saw me sort of hover the ornament over the top of the mold design before I started. That was just to get a bit of an idea of how much of this particular design I'm going to be able to fit on the ornament. So I'm just pushing out the excess clay with my fingers. I'm going to tidy up the edges a little bit. Then I'm going to press down firmly to make sure I've got a good impression. And then I'm going to be flexing the mold to help that clay release. And then I'm going to be flipping it over and pulling the mold back. I'm then going to be using IOD's Dainty Flourishes mold. I'm dusting some of the slimmer swirl designs there, and then I'm working my dust air dry clay into those and sort of pushing out that excess clay. And I am going to be casting the other, I think it's actually like the mirror image of that design. I'm going to be casting that one as well. These can be quite delicate to get out, so I do try to use quite a bit of cornstarch. If you're having trouble getting these sort of intricate castings out, I have heard it suggested that you put your mold in the freezer for about 10 minutes before you try to take your clay out. Now, I haven't glued the angel mold on just yet, but I have placed it on the ornament so that I can see where to glue these dainty flourish designs down. So I'm just adding some of my Sealers Quickset wood glue to one of those first, and then I'm going to position it on the ornament, just having the angel sitting there as a guide as to where I want it to be situated. And then I'm going to gently press those down, and then I'm going to repeat the same process for the other dainty flourishes casting. I did end up getting a little bit of a break here. You can just see there as I was pulling it along. That's fine. I can just glue that back into place. But I am going for a bit of a vintage look here, so it will still be in keeping with that look. I'm then going to add some of my wood glue to the back of the angel, and then I'm going to position that on the ornament. I'm then going to gently press that down. Don't press too hard because you could damage the imprint that you've made. And then I'm also going to have it sort of wrapped around the bottom, going into the gap left by the Dainty Flourishes mold. I'm then going to take this bow mold that I had in my stash. I believe you can get them on Amazon. And I'm just going to dust the larger of the two bows with some cornstarch, and then I'm going to work my clay into it. Now, these molds, unfortunately, are not the same quality as IOD. They do not have a micro rim, so I do have to be gentle here and not sort of press that clay out too hard. I'm just going to tidy up the edges, removing any of that excess clay, and then I'm going to flex that mold. And then I'm going to sort of fold it back and just gently release that clay using my fingers to pull out any of the areas that aren't coming out. I'm then going to add some glue to the back of the bow and position it in place. I let my clay castings dry overnight, and the next day I took out Paint Couture's Queen's Court mineral paint. I started off just adding that beautiful blue tone to the areas where you could still see the grey primer. But as I was doing this, I did realise that it was going to be a little bit tricky to get a neat line. I am going to be doing white on the angel, so I decided to just go ahead and paint over the top of all of the castings, including the angel, and then I would just go over the top later with the white. I just thought that was a bit of a tidier look. I ended up doing 2 coats of this Queen's Court mineral paint. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Italian Ivory mineral paint. I'm going to be using that first over the top of the angel. And as I said before, because I already have that Queen's Court paint down, I am able to very carefully go in and add that beautiful sort of creamy white. And it does just look a lot neater than me also trying to cover the clay. I'm going to be painting the entire angel with that. I don't really want to see any of the Queen's Court blue paint on the angel itself. And then I am also going to be adding that same white to the bow up the top, and of course the Dainty Flourishes castings as well. I ended up doing 2 coats. Once I was finished with the front of the ornament, I did then turn it over, and I'm going to be applying 3 coats of the Italian Ivory. I'm doing 3 because obviously we do have that darker primer to cover as well. Once that was dry, I took out IOD's new classical Christmas stamp, and this is perfect for French country style designs. I'm going to be using this beautiful little angel or cherub, whatever you want to call it, that has the little trumpet and the music sheet, and I'm going to be using this gold ink that I got from a place called Officeworks in Australia. This is not the best quality ink, unfortunately, but we are going to be layering IOD ink over the top of it afterwards, so I'm not too worried. So I'm just going to tidy up any areas where I've got excess ink, and then I'm going to be flipping the stamp over, and I'm going to be positioning that in the center. I'm going to hover the stamp over where I want it to go, and then when I'm happy with that, I'm going to press it down. I'm not using any kind of plastic backing on this because I need to be able to bend that stamp over the curved surface. So I always have one hand holding the stamp in place while the other one moves around and applies pressure. And then once I am happy with that, I'm going to gently lift the stamp straight up. When that was dry, I took out IOD's permanent black ink. I'm going to apply it over the top of that same stamp that I've already cleaned, and then I'm going to press that over the top. So it's sort of got like a gold sort of halo in the background. When the ink was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1, and I'm going to be applying that in a dabbing motion over the top of the areas that you can see that we did in the Queen's Court. I'm not going to be going over the top of the castings. I'm just going to be leaving those. So I'm going to do one coat of this. Dabbing the product on like this tends to give you more erratic, sort of natural looking cracks. I left that then for about 30 minutes to dry, and I also repeated the same process on the other side of the ornament. I will say that I wish I had of sealed over the top of the gold and black ink, because later on when I come in with a glaze, unfortunately the gold disappears. I let that dry, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Crackle Step 2, and I'm just going to be applying it in the same motion in the same places. And then I did let that dry for about an hour. I will of course be repeating the same process on the back side of the ornament as well. After about an hour of dry time, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to begin by adding it to the angel first. This is a really great technique if you are wanting to bring out the definition in those castings, and I really love this darker tone. I'm going to take out a wet wipe then and start pulling back that glaze from the high points, so the glaze is going to sit in the low points, and as I said, it's going to give the casting more definition. I then moved on to the section where we had added the crackle, and I'm just working a section at a time. Even though we have used mineral paints and obviously that crackle medium, I don't want the glaze to sit and set too quickly. I am also going over the top of the castings, and then I'm going to use a wet wipe to pull that back. It really is so satisfying when you pull that glaze back and you see the glaze sitting down in all of those beautiful cracks that we created with the crackle, and also how it's sitting in the details of the castings. I just really love this old world vintage look. I then flipped the ornament over, and I'm going to repeat the same process, adding that glaze over the top of the ornament and then wiping it back. As I said, I really do wish that I had have sealed my ink first to maintain that lovely gold. That being said, I probably could have gone in and maybe stamped over the top of it again, but this is just one of those things where you learn through experience what works and what doesn't. So I'm going to start pulling back that glaze, and I really want to make sure that I have it sort of more focused towards the outside. We don't want to obscure that lovely stamped image too much. I love a vintage look, but if this was too grungy for you, you could definitely leave this step out. When the glaze was dry, I took out my brush that still had the Italian Ivory mineral paint on it, and I'm just going to go over the top of the angel. I'm hitting those high points. I just want to bring a little bit of lightness back just to the angel. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Pale Gold Heavy Metal Metallic, and I'm going to be using that over the top of the bow that we put up the top, and I'm also going to be adding that to the Dainty Flourishes castings as well. So the heavy metal metallics are a lot more highly pigmented. It's a much sort of richer tone, but the luxe metallics would also look beautiful here as well. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around, just adding it to the bow and the dainty flourishes section. And I really love the combination of that creamy Italian ivory tone with the Queen's Court. I just think these all work so beautifully together, and they definitely have a very French country feel. I ended up doing 2 coats of the pale gold to get the look that I wanted. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1 again, and I'm applying it over the top of the angel section first. Now I'm using this like a glue, so this becomes sticky and tacky to the touch after about 30 minutes, so it is perfect to use if you are wanting to add glitter. I'm also going to add some of the Crackle Step 1 just around the inner edges of the ornament. I don't want it on top of the gold, I just want it to be almost like a little halo around the angel, around the outer edges. So I finished applying that, and then I let it dry for about 30 seconds. Then I took out Paint Couture's Sheer Frost German Glass Glitter. This is a beautiful sort of clear toned glitter, and then I'm going to start applying it over the top of the angel first. And that Crackle Step 1, as I said, it acts like a glue, so it's going to hold on to that glitter really well. I'm going to continue to sprinkle that over the top. I don't want to obscure the angel's face, so I did end up wiping a little bit of that back. And then I'm also going to start adding it around the edges of the ornament as well, where we have that Crackle Step 1. And I just love this. I think it is the perfect finishing touch. It gives that beautiful shine that we love to see in Christmas trees. I always use my glitter over the top of some sort of a plastic sheet so I can pour the excess back into my container, but there's always little bits left, so I like to go in and use a lint roller over the top of my silicone mat work area to pick up any of that excess. Next, I took out some cream chiffon ribbon. I'm going to cut that to size, but it's a little bit too thick for the look that I want, so I'm going to make a cut in the center to start me off, and then I'm going to be tearing that in half. And I love the rough, worn edges that this provides as well. I'm then going to thread the chiffon ribbon through the hole in the top, and then once I have an even amount of that ribbon either side, I'm going to just tie a simple knot. And here's a look at our finished ornament. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. The new Angelic Tapers mold is so beautiful. Make sure you grab them before they're gone. They are limited release. And also the classical Christmas stamp was the perfect combination with this mold. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. Project, I'm going to be using this lovely round basket. As soon as I saw it, I thought it would make a perfect Christmas tree basket. My first step is to create a label for the basket. So I am cutting out some drop cloth, I'm making a small cut, and then I'm actually tearing that fabric because I love that jagged edge that it creates. If you have trouble doing the tearing part, you could cut it out as per normal, and then you could use some sandpaper to distress back those edges. Once I have my label organized, I'm going to be using IOD's Merry and Bright stamp, and I'm going to use this design in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'm taking a little bit of plastic, I'm peeling off the stamp. This particular stamp actually has two parts, so I'm just making sure that I have those together. And then I'm using IOD's Permanent black ink. I'm just dabbing that over there. I'm then being very careful to go in and tidy up any excess ink because I don't want that going on my fabric. I'm then going to position it where I want it to go and press down. You want to press harder on the fabric, and you definitely want to use a bit more ink here because it does take a little bit more for it to soak into that fabric. Next, I'm going to focus on the basket itself. I'm pouring out a little bit of Dixie Belle's chocolate chalk mineral paint, and then I'm going to water it down to create a wash or a sort of stain. And then I'm going to apply it to my basket using a chip brush, and I'm also using a water mister. This is going to help my paint to spread and to help it get into all of those little nooks and crannies. I'm then taking a paper towel and I'm dabbing back some of the excess to show a little bit of that lighter tone underneath. And I'm going to continue adding that paint wash to the exterior of the basket first, using my mister to help spread it, dabbing off the excess. And then once I have the exterior of the basket painted, I am going to be moving on to the inside and repeating the same process. So I did use that chocolate chalk mineral paint for this. You could definitely take a spray can if this seems a little bit too tedious for you, and you could use a spray can to paint your basket instead. I just love the more natural look that this gives. So once it's dry, you can see here that it's turned into a lovely warm brown. I'm going to take some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in white, and I'm applying it over the basket with a natural bristle brush, and then I'm wiping back the excess with a microfiber cloth. So this is going to tone that paint. It's going to give it a little bit of a whitewashed look as well, and it's also going to seal the basket as well. It was a little bit time consuming getting it into all those little grooves, but I think it was definitely worth it. I definitely love the way that this turned out. If you like this look but you don't have white wax, you could create a paint wash with a water-based paint in the color of your choice to do this instead. You could use a glaze, and if sealing with wax seems a little bit tedious to you, you could just seal this with a spray sealer instead. Next, I'm going to take this ribbon that I got from Spotlight Australia, and I'm going to be wrapping it around the basket in the center. This is going to go behind our label. I love these beautiful colors. They feel very French country to me. So I'm just working out how much I need, and then I'm going to trim off the amount that I want. And once I've done that, I'm going to be applying this with hot glue. So I'm going to be gluing it down so that if I ever want to change this, I can just heat up that hot glue and I can take it off. So I'm just applying a strip of that hot glue at the back where our two pieces of ribbon meet. I'm pressing down my ribbon, and then I'm going to be adding a little bit more glue just to make sure it's secured in place. And then I'm also going to be putting another strip of glue so that we can attach our other piece. Once I have the other section glued down, I'm going to fold over that excess piece of ribbon, and then I'm going to glue that piece down. In folding it over, I feel like this gives it a much tidier, more finished look. I'm also then going to go around and add little dabs of glue here and there just to make sure that that ribbon's going to stay in place. Now that I have my ribbon in place, it's time to attach our label that we created. So again, I'm just going to be using that hot glue to secure it in place. It'll definitely be enough for the purpose of this basket. So I've just added a strip to the top. I'm smoothing that down, and then I'm going to add another strip to the bottom. And you can see I'm sort of pulling it and just trying to make sure that it's going to maintain that shape and be even. So I'm then going to add a little bit of glue on either side as well. And here's our finished Christmas tree basket. I love how this turned out. I feel like it was quite a plain basket before, and now it is perfect for a Christmas tree or any Christmas decorations really. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. second project, I'm going to be starting off with this little peat pot that I got from Amazon a while ago, and I'm using Paint Couture's Pacific Pearl chalk paint. I'm going to apply one coat over the entire outside of the peat pot to start off with, including the bottom. I don't mind if I don't have perfect coverage here. And then I'm also going to be painting the inside of the peat pot just about halfway down. When that was dry, I took out some styrofoam packaging that I had. I'm just going to go around and do a rough circle, approximately the size of my pot. I am going to be cutting further on the inside of that because obviously it's going to need to be a bit narrower than that. But I'm using this almost like floral foam. And then I'm going to add some hot glue around the outside and push it into the peat pot. I then took out Paint Couture's crust medium, and I'm going to put some of that out into another container, and then I'm going to be tinting it with Paint Couture's Pacific Pearl chalk paint. So just a couple of drops, and then I'm going to stir it really well. I'm then going to start applying the crust medium over the top of that polystyrene that we have shoved inside the peat pot there. I'm sort of scraping it around and then dabbing at that crust medium to make it look a little bit more like snow. When it was almost completely dry, I took out this little bottle brush tree that I had in my stash, and I'm going to be adding that into the polystyrene with a little bit of hot glue. I then decided that I wanted to add some lace around the outside of the peat pot, so I'm going to add some hot glue and start applying this lace that I thrifted. I got a bag of it for I think it was like $3, and I'm just going to continue adding the glue. I then trimmed off the excess and added some more glue all around the top section so that I could fold it over and have it stick on the outside. I ended up having to apply the two different sections of lace separately so that they would sit straight around the pot given the size and shape of the pot. So I'm just going to continue adding beads of glue, pulling that lace tight, and I will repeat the same process for the other piece that I'm going to put on the back. I then took out this little bird ornament. I've taken the hanging attachment off, and I'm going to be gluing that next to the tree. This is an ornament that I sell in my shop. I will have my website listed below in case you want to have a little look. And I ended up deciding I didn't want the feathers, so I'm going to reactivate that glue and pull those out and save them for another project. Next, I used my musical stamp to just stamp some plain A4 paper. I'm then going to cut that out, and I'm going to be using this with my bird project. So I've got that cut out. I'm then going to roll it so it looks like a bit of a rolled up musical sheet. And then I'm going to trim it so that it fits a little bit better in the pot, so it looks a little bit more to scale. I'll roll it a bit tighter, and then I'm going to use some of this silver tinsel, and I'm going to tie a knot. If you don't have the musical stamp, you could find a free printable online and use that instead. I then added some beads of hot glue where I wanted my little roll of musical notes to go, and then I'm going to position that in place. I then decided that I wanted to add some more lace around the base of the pot, so I'm just taking this vintage lace that I thrifted, and I'm going to be gluing that around the center of the pot. I just wanted to bring in some more of that creamy tone to go with the tree, have that sort of tie in with the pot below. I then took out some brown florist wire that I had in my stash. I'm going to poke that through the polystyrene and then have that looping over so that it looks like a handle. I'm just going to work out how much I have to cut off, and then I'm going to trim that excess off, and then I'm going to poke the other end of our little wire handle into the rest of the polystyrene on the other side. I then took out some more of my table confetti that I used in the first project. I'm going to add some glue to the back of the snowflake. I'm going to have it glued to the top of the tree, but I'm also going to have it sort of attached to our handle. The handle is just for display purposes, so I'm not worried about it being in too securely. I then took out some more A4 paper, and I'm going to be using another stamp from IOD's Merry and Bright stamp set. I'm adding some black IOD ink, and I'm going to be stamping that paper with just this simple little Merry Christmas design. I then cut little triangles into the ends of each end of the little sign so that it looks a bit more like a banner. I'm then going to be repeating the same process, applying Aleene's tacky glue around the edges of the banner, and then I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Gilded Gold Glitter. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When the glue was dry, I added a bead of hot glue to the back of the little banner on one end, and then I'm going to position that in place and add another little bead of glue to the other side. Finally, I'm going to take the ribbon that came with the little bird ornament, and I'm going to be tying a little bow in that and attaching it to the top. And here's a look at our little bird Christmas vignette. I love how this turned out, and this is definitely a craft that you can customize to suit your style. Just change up what you add into the little peat pot and maybe change up your color scheme. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video collection, and if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.